Meanwhile, Quebec announced today that it is officially ending its financing of the Northvolt battery factory.
This is like losing a child. It's incredibly emotional. Those are the words of Peter Carlson, the man who raised $14 billion to build Europe's answer to Tesla, only to watch it all crumble into bankruptcy while workers mysteriously died in their sleep. This is the shocking story of Northvolt, the Swedish company that promised to revolutionize green energy, but instead became one of 2024's most devastating business failures. In 2016, a former Tesla executive had a bold vision: make Europe energy independent by building the continent's first massive battery manufacturing empire. Politicians called Sweden a future battery superpower. Investors believed in this dream so much that they handed over more funding than small nations see in years. But behind the glossy presentations and confident projections, a nightmare was unfolding. Workers were bleeding from their noses and losing fingernails. Machines from China came with Chinese manuals that nobody could read. And young people, started dying in their sleep after working at the factory. Today, we're diving into how Europe's most promising green energy startup became a cautionary tale about what happens when ambition meets the brutal reality of manufacturing, and when the human cost becomes unbearable. Our story begins with Peter Carlson, the man who spent 4 years working side by side with Elon Musk as Tesla's head of supply chain. Carlson witnessed firsthand Musk's legendary commitment to manufacturing excellence, the CEO who famously sleeps on factory floors until production problems are solved, who understands that execution separates dreamers from industry titans. But Carlson saw something that kept him awake at night. Europe was completely helpless, dependent on Asian companies for batteries, the heart of the electric vehicle revolution. This wasn't just a business opportunity, it was a national security crisis waiting to happen. In 2016, Carlson co-founded Northvolt with a mission that sounded almost too good to be true: build the world's greenest battery using 100% renewable energy, break Europe's dependence on China, and make oil history. The timing seemed perfect. The European Union was pushing aggressive climate goals, electric vehicle sales were exploding, and politicians were desperate for a European champion. Carlson became what one reporter called an immediate media darling, the golden boy who would save Europe's green future. The funding rounds read like a European Union wish list. Goldman Sachs led early rounds. Volkswagen invested billions. The European Investment Bank backed the project. Swedish politicians literally put up welcome signs for Northvolt. By 2024, Carlson had raised over $15 billion, making Northvolt one of Europe's most valuable startups. The plan was simple: build gigafactories across Europe, challenge Chinese dominance, and go public at a $20 billion valuation. With that much capital, what could go wrong? Northvolt chose Skellefteå, a small city near the Arctic Circle, for their first gigafactory. The location seemed perfect. Abundant renewable energy from hydroelectric dams, skilled workers from the region's mining heritage, and a local government so eager they put up "Welcome Northvolt" signs at the airport. "We stopped suddenly and reversed," Carlson later recalled about seeing that sign. There it said, "Welcome Northvolt." Today the welcome might be a little different. But building batteries isn't like building cars. Carlson himself compared it to Formula One manufacturing, combining semiconductor precision with the scale of the food industry. Every step requires perfection. A single speck of dust can ruin millions of dollars worth of batteries. Unlike Tesla's more conventional approach, Northvolt wanted to control everything, from raw material extraction to battery recycling. It was ambitious beyond belief, a complete circular system that would revolutionize how batteries are made. But reality hit hard. The machines Northvolt bought from China came with Chinese manuals. When something went wrong, we had to talk to the Chinese, and if they weren't available, we had to have a Zoom meeting to fix the problem, recalls a former factory worker. Production was supposed to reach massive scale, but as one insider revealed, at most the production at the plant has been at around 5% of what it was supposed to be. Even worse, safety problems were mounting. One colleague started bleeding from the nose all the time. Then she lost her fingernails. Siri Almqvist, a Northvolt employee, told a union magazine. Since 2019, there would be 26 serious workplace accidents reported, including workers losing arms or fingers, chemical exposure causing burns, explosions, fires, and employees inhaling dangerous gases. Here's where Northvolt learned the lesson that Elon Musk has repeatedly warned about. Prototyping is easy, production is hard. Musk famously said that manufacturing is 100 times harder than building prototypes. And Northvolt was discovering this reality in the most brutal way possible. While Musk had spent countless nights sleeping on Tesla's factory floors to solve production issues, Northvolt's leadership seemed increasingly disconnected from the day-to-day chaos. The company that promised to deliver batteries to power millions of cars was struggling to produce enough for a few thousand. In June 2024, the mask finally slipped. BMW, frustrated with chronic production delays and quality issues, canceled their $2 billion contract, one of Northvolt's biggest deals. This wasn't just a lost sale. It was a public execution that told the world Europe's supposed Tesla killer couldn't even fulfill basic orders from European automakers. But the most shocking development wasn't financial. It was human. In 2024, 3 young workers died mysteriously in their sleep after working shifts at the factory. January, a 33-year-old employee found dead in his bed. February, a 19-year-old worker found dead in the same manner. June, a man in his 60s collapsed and died on his balcony after coming home from work. Swedish police launched an investigation that continues today. The deaths were called a tragic coincidence, but workers and families weren't convinced. Something was very wrong in Northvolt's Arctic paradise. Reports emerged of workers being forced to handle toxic waste without proper safety equipment. An investigation revealed 47 accidents involving hazardous chemicals classified as cancer-causing, reproductive disrupting, and life-threatening. No matter how little you are exposed, there is a risk that you will become ill, sometimes after as long as 30 to 40 years, warned Karin Staff, an expert at Sweden's Work Environment Authority. Then came the ultimate nightmare. In November 2023, a 25-year-old technician was injured in a dust explosion on a production line. He died in December from severe burns. Swedish prosecutors prepared to serve Northvolt with a suspicion of gross manslaughter notice. The company that promised to save the environment was now potentially facing criminal charges for killing its own workers. By late 2024, even Peter Carlson couldn't deny reality anymore. In what would become his final interviews, he made a stunning admission. I should have probably pulled the brake earlier on some of the expansion paths in order to make sure that the core engine was moving according to plan, but it was too late. The man who had been called a media darling was now avoiding journalists. When pressed about selling 200 million kroner worth of Northvolt shares before the bankruptcy, he stormed out of a press conference, calling it an incredibly stupid question. The numbers were devastating. $5.8 billion in debt, only $30 million in cash, barely enough to operate for 1 week.
It's a bit easy to say that right now that it's officially a big failure. And I don't know how you recover from that, because that was at the heart of their economic vision for Quebec.
The company that had raised more money than most nations was literally days from running out of cash. Major customers were fleeing. Volkswagen, their biggest investor, told Carlson they couldn't provide any more capital. Even Sweden's government refused to bail out their supposed national champion. On November 21, 2024, Northvolt filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in the United States. The next day, Peter Carlson stepped down as CEO, though he remained on the board. Northvolt is like a baby for me, Carlson said at what would be his final press conference as CEO. This is an unbelievably emotional day. The man who had promised to revolutionize European energy was walking away from the wreckage of his $14 billion dream. The bankruptcy meant 1,600 workers lost their jobs immediately, with more cuts planned. Families that had moved to Skellefteå for the green future were left stranded in the Arctic Circle. Unemployment spiked, and many were forced to leave the city entirely. It has been terrible living with this, Carlson would later admit in a rare interview, describing how he'd had very, very dark moments, wondering if there was any way forward. Northvolt's story proves what Elon Musk learned during Tesla's own production hell. Manufacturing success requires obsessive attention to detail and hands-on leadership that can't be delegated or managed from a boardroom. Musk's famous quote proved prophetic. Manufacturing is 100 times harder than prototyping. Building one perfect battery in a lab is completely different from building millions consistently, safely, and profitably. Northvolt had the vision and the money, but they lacked the entrepreneurial intensity needed to turn ambitious plans into manufacturing reality. They needed a leader willing to sleep on the factory floor until problems were solved, not executives content to manage from Stockholm boardrooms. Carlson's biggest mistake was expanding too fast before perfecting the basics. As one analyst noted, Northvolt committed the cardinal sin of expanding into new territories before demonstrating success in their first market. While their Skellefteå factory was producing at only 5% capacity and workers were dying, Northvolt was announcing new factories in Germany, Poland, and Canada. It was like trying to run multiple marathons before learning to walk. Perhaps most importantly, Northvolt underestimated how difficult it would be to compete with established Chinese manufacturers who had decades of experience, massive scale advantages, and crucially, proven safety records. Companies like KHL and BYD didn't become battery giants by raising venture capital and making grand promises. They succeeded through years of perfecting processes, building sustainable business models, and most importantly, keeping their workers alive. The story reveals a fundamental truth about entrepreneurship. Great leaders are irreplaceable, and there's no substitute for executives who understand that execution is everything. The entrepreneurial skills that matter most can't be bought. They must be earned through experience, obsession, and relentless hands-on problem solving. When Musk warned that manufacturing is 100 times harder than prototyping, he wasn't exaggerating. He was sharing hard-won wisdom from nights spent sleeping on factory floors, debugging production lines, and refusing to accept failure. Today, Northvolt exists only in bankruptcy court. The company is trying to restructure its debts and find a path forward, but the road ahead is uncertain. Some assets may be sold, some factories may close permanently, and thousands of jobs remain in limbo. Peter Carlson has started a new AI company, but he admits he hasn't landed yet from the emotional devastation of Northvolt's collapse. "Of course I feel guilt," he says. "This is like losing a child." The collapse has forced Europe to confront an uncomfortable reality. Maybe the continent can't simply will itself to energy independence through venture capital and political rhetoric. The dream of a European battery superpower lies in ruins, and Europe remains more dependent on China than ever. But beyond the financial devastation lies a more troubling legacy: the human cost. Young workers died mysteriously, families were destroyed, and an entire community was left betrayed by promises that were never realistic. "Today the welcome might be a little different," Carlson had said about those welcome signs in Skellefteå. He was right, but probably not in the way he intended. Northvolt's story reminds us that in business, vision and funding are not enough. The entrepreneurial skills that matter most, operational excellence, hands-on leadership, and genuine care for worker safety, cannot be bought with venture capital or replaced by marketing campaigns. The company that promised to make oil history instead made history as one of Europe's most expensive and deadly business failures. It's a cautionary tale about what happens when ambition meets reality, and when the human cost of failure becomes unbearable. What do you think? Could better leadership have saved Northvolt? Or was this disaster inevitable given the competitive realities of battery manufacturing? And more importantly, how many more workers might have died if this company had continued operating? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story as shocking as I did, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into business failures where the human cost was too high. And check out our video on Tesla's own production struggles. The company that Northvolt tried to emulate but couldn't match. And crucially, the company that managed to scale without killing its workers.